Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. That was a great intro right there. I think that was from Jason. I'm your host, Cesar Hernandez, and today we're going to talk about Liga MX. We're going to talk about the relegation race, a little bit about Osorio, and a little bit about the Mexicans abroad as well. But before we get into that, let me introduce tonight's guest. First up, we have Jason's cell phone.
That's right.
We have Jason Marquin. Jason, how you doing, man?
That's good. Yeah, my phone let me know that we just started a live video. So it's excellent. Thanks, phone. I appreciate that. Yeah, doing well over here in Eagles country, apparently. All American football over here. Happy to not talk about that tonight, though, and focus on some Liga MX, which honestly wasn't the best Liga MX weekend, but it's still good because it's still Liga MX, so there's still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I felt like I was missing out on some exciting NFL stuff over the weekend, and then I try to justify it with Liga MX stuff, but there's a lot of 0-0 results. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. We got Tom Marshall over in Guadalajara. Tom, give us your thoughts on the Eagles' recent win over the Vikings.
I thought the Eagles were a band from the 80s or something, weren't they? The 70s. No?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
They're playing the Super Bowl half time.
They probably are. It would really be surprising.
I have actually tried to get into NFL and all that, and I even bought a game on the PlayStation, just to try and understand all the moves and all that. But then I just I don't like it that much. I just don't like it. I understand the histories and the the backstories of the players, and it's interesting. And there's that documentary on Netflix. Was it called Last Chance U? Or something like that.
I've never even heard of that. No,
it was absolutely brilliant, and that was the first time I've liked something to do with NFL. But I've got nothing to say about the game.
All right, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later, Tom. We'll be sure to dive into the Eagles and their greatest hits as well. Naib, we got you over in Houston now, not Mexico City, right?
Mexico City now, Cesar.
Oh, Mexico City.
Yeah,
I'm always confused,
man. We got back. We got back a couple of days ago. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, I went to the Pachuca Lobos this weekend. Honda had 2 assists, and Lobos three consecutive losses. So I mean, of course, it starts to worrying times over there in Lobos. But I mean, I think they got a bunch of new players coming in. So I think that's why the system hasn't been working as of late. But it's an exciting team to watch. Actually, Lobos live. I hadn't watched Lobos live since they got promoted. And, it's just really interesting to see a young Mexican coach play with such a daring style, because most of the Mexican coaches are really reserved in some way or another. But Puente just goes all out, and doesn't care if he gets scored on 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals. He just wants to give a good spectacle.
Nice. We'll definitely be talking about Lobos Bop later. And of course, talk about, the relegation race too, because that's going to be one of the big talking points with each passing week. Okay, guys. So before we talk about the relegation race, Liga MX, let's first talk about the big question for today. That big question is, who is the best Mexican playing in the league at this minute? And by the league, I mean Liga MX, and not someone who has potential, not someone who has a legacy. Literally, who is the best player in the league right now? And we're going to go to Jason first on this. Jason, who is that player for you?
I had a tough time with this. I mean, you go down pretty far on the list of best Liga MX players before you get to the best Mexican Liga MX players, unfortunately. But I kind of look at Néstor Araujo, a player that I think could be playing in Europe at this point. One of the Mexican defenders that's really come on strong and has really proven himself with El Tri, and seems like a player that really could be an important player. And I think he might just be one of the best Mexican players in Liga MX at this point. So he's the guy I'm looking at. I think hopefully maybe he won't be playing in Liga MX much longer. Hopefully he makes a big move at some point here. We could see how he fares at an even bigger clubs, hopefully. So we shall see.
Yeah, keep my fingers crossed for that too. And Naib, who do you think is the best Mexican playing in Liga MX?
When I was looking at this question, I mean, I think it's a really interesting one because it makes you kind of analyze from this different perspectives. And I think we'll find out when we say our answers how our options are kind of different. But I was between Pizarro and Edson Alvarez, but at the end I decided for Edson Alvarez, because he's this player that just came out of nowhere right away from the U20 into the first team in America and did it with so much ease. And I think right now, I think there was criticism last week with his performance as right back. It wasn't so convincing. And then yesterday, he struggled against Gallardo's speed, but I think there was a certain resilience in him when he was marking. He just never gave up. I mean, he knew that he was going to struggle against Gallardo's speed, but at the end of the match, I think that's where Edson kind of showed that he was at a top level, not giving up. And I think the thing with Edson is that he can play as right back, center back, and I believe that his habitat is a defensive midfield role. I think he's perhaps that prototype that Osorio really wants as a defensive midfielder. It just depends if he's going to give him the opportunity in the upcoming weeks and months with the friendlies that are coming. But it's an exciting prospect. And also, I would say, as a Mexican player in the league, I think the fact that he can dominate 3 positions that are really key in a team, and not only any team, America, puts him at that level.
No, I'm definitely a big fan of Edson Alvarez as well, and he is in my short list for the top Mexican player in the league. But before I reveal who I think that best player is, let's go to Tom. Tom, who is your best player?
I've gone for Javier Aquino from Tigres. Obviously, he's just been such a regular in the national team for a long time now. I think he's in his prime, and I think he didn't work out quite as well as he would have wanted in Europe last time. But I think when you're answering this question, which player could you put in La Liga, right now, and you'd be guaranteed results? And I think Javier Aquino is the nearest one to fit that bill. I'd throw Jesus Dueñas. I'd put right up there as well. I think he's such a mature player, and Araujo it'd probably be my top 3. And yeah, I mean, I think Oribe Peralta should probably be in the conversation. I know he might not have played his best football in the start of this season, but he's just been so consistent for so many years now that I think he at least deserves a mention.
Yeah, I mean, on my list, I've got Edson, I've got Oribe, I've got Aquino too. But for me, I think I'm just a big fan of the guy. I think Elias Hernandez is up there for me. I think he's just an assist machine, and it helps that you got someone like Boselli playing next to you, so that definitely helps. But he's also capable of scoring goals as well, and I think that sometimes a player like him can kind of be slightly overlooked because of the exciting amount of winger options that he currently has. But yeah, for me, it's Elias Hernandez. He's up there.
With Elias Hernandez right now, I'd love to see him in a different team. Because I think he's so established with Leon, he's so comfortable there, and it's not a criticism of him, but I'd like to now see him in a different context to see how he does. You know what I mean? Because I think we're just so used to seeing Elias Hernandez providing all these assists, doing all these great things with Leon, and maybe he doesn't get the praise he actually deserves for that. But it would be nice to see him do it somewhere else, and then kind of, I'm sure he would be much more recognized for the player he is right now.
Yeah, no, I'm actually slightly surprised that he hasn't left Leon. I'm slightly surprised that someone like America hasn't made some sort of offer for a player like him, just because of how well he's done. I mean, like I said, I know once again it helps that he's working with Boselli, but just the amount of assists that he's been able to provide, and it's not just one season. He's done it for multiple seasons now. So, and he's had flashes of brilliance for the national team. Maybe not nearly as good as I wanted him to be during the last Gold Cup, but I think he's just a quality player. I'm a big fan of him.
No, it'd be intriguing to know. It'd be intriguing to know how expensive he is, in the draft, because like Piojo Herrera said in this past draft, everyone wanted to give America a high price tag, and that's why America didn't end up buying. And of course, we've seen such overvalued price tags in Mexico that it makes you think, well, look at the age that Elias has. And what if Elias is worth $20 million in Mexico? Would a Liga MX club be willing to pay $20 million for Elias Hernandez? And I think that's why Elias doesn't move, because I think Elias could possibly already be in Chivas, for example, with all this fact that a lot of León players have moved from León to Chivas. It makes sense that he would have been an option at some point.
Yeah, no, they would have definitely been asking about him, 100%, America, Chivas. I think León as well, Jesus Martinez, has been adamant that Elias Hernandez isn't going anywhere. And, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more further on, but if you look at this León team now, I think that the strength, I think Gustavo Diaz is a good manager, very balanced in the team he's putting out. But I think that if you look at the spine, not just the spine of the team, but the key players in that team right now, they've been there for quite a while now.
Yeah.
You know, Nacho Gonzalez at the back, William Yarbrough, going into midfield, Mejia. He's been there a couple of seasons now. Then obviously got Elias Hernandez, Luis Montes, and Boselli. And you got, you know, those 5-6 players have, you know, they've been there for quite a lot of years now. And I think you see that on the pitch because there's an understanding between the team. And I think in the first few weeks of the season, one of the reasons why, you know, Leon have been right up there compared to other clubs is that I think that it just all other clubs are still kind of waiting to click, whereas Leon's already there. They've already played together for so long.
And now they've got that young, promising American, Landon Donovan. So we'll see how that kid does with the team. Jason, what did anyone say on social media or on the chat about the big question? I'm interested to see what other people had to say other than us. Because
we had a lot of interesting responses. Some of the ones we mentioned were there, of course, a lot of Rodolfo Pizarro mentioned by a lot of people. Getting a lot of love.
Definitely not Chivas fans.
Definitely not. A few also singing along the same lines. A few calls for trophies. Lalo, possibly you want to call him. Another call for Pulido is second to none, says Daniel Charles. We have a bunch of Edson Alvarez, a bunch of Elias Hernandez. Jesus Gallardo, says Francisco Centeno. Aquino. J3 Gerard, something like that, says Chapito Montes. And that seems to be the extent of all of the. Oh, also one call for Uribe. So that there is some love for Uribe. Okay. And Gio Duarte says Jonathan Gonzalez already. So
wow. All right. Well, thanks to everyone.
What do you guys think about Pizarro? How near is what does he have to do to become the best?
I think he needs to have at least a couple more good seasons underneath him. I think he has a potential. I mean, if we want to talk about potential, that's an entirely different conversation here. But I think he has a potential to not only thrive in Liga MX, but also go to Europe. I don't think that's that big of a shock. But I want to see at least one or two more good seasons from him.
I like what I saw real quick, Jason, with Pizarro is how he did in that the championship year with Chivas and how he played in the Liguilla. I mean, I think he made a difference that was really important for the whole team, especially since the opponent was Tigres. You know, to have a Pizarro in that level raised Chivas' chances of winning. And I think if he's able to show that more often, especially in the regular season, because he just shows like little bits of it and not kind of a whole season with that consistency. I think we're talking about, you know, probably the best one because of the potential he has. You know, has good shot outside the box, can create a lot of plays. As you know, when he takes on the players, he usually wins the duels. So I think those details are really that stand out with him.
Jason, you're going to say something?
The crazy thing is, like about 6 months ago, I think if we were asked the same question, I would have went with his teammate Orbelin. And just nowhere to be mentioned at this point. And justifiably, I guess I just would have been wrong. But like, man, the fall off has been tragic. And it's, I mean, Pizarro, Orbelin, you know, they look like locks for the World Cup, you know, like 6-8 months ago. And now, like, I don't think so. So it's kind of sad what's happened with those guys out in Chivas, I think.
All right, guys, let's get the show going here. It's I just realized it's almost 14 minutes into it, and we still haven't got past the big question. I'll put the blame on me. But just really quickly, today we're going to talk about, obviously, some of those 0-0 results. We're going to talk about Pumas, talk about the relegation race, a little bit on Osorio, a little bit about the Mexicans abroad, and Tom's going to give us a little information about Chicharito near the end of the show. All right, guys, so let's talk about the zeros. We saw plenty of zeros. We saw, as Jason put down in the show guideline, just donuts galore. We saw 4 of the 9 Liga MX matches ended.
We're going to talk about donuts. That's why I'm here.
I'm sorry. Well, Tom, what's your favorite donut? A big fan of
that
glazed.
Sugar coating thing on the outside.
Yeah, the glazed. Yeah. All right, anywho.
Glazed.
Glazed.
All right, so 4 of the 9 matches ended in scoreless draws, including 3 marquee matches. I mean, let's go to Naive on this. thoughts on any of these? Let's focus because we're going to talk about Querétaro and Tigres in a bit. Let's Cruz Azul, León, Monterrey, Xolos, Pumas, America. Anything that really stood out to you from those matches?
No, I think the Pumas America, they had some excitement. There were several posts and crossbars in the match. I think defensively from both sides, there was some type. I really like, for example, the Spaniard Arribas. I think he had good movements in the central defense, and quick adaptation period. I think with that guy. With America, it's still developing a little bit in the forward position and the attacking, because he took off Darwin and now he put in Cecilio. And I think Cecilio gave some sparks, but it wasn't, amazing that it kind of blew you away. And then, with Peralta, he had some options there, and Martin. It's going to be interesting with America because right now it looks like those two are going to be the strikers for America. Two Mexican strikers are going to be there with Piojo Herrera trying to put America back at the top of the league. And of course, there's the integrations of the new players like Ibargüen and Mene. Well, that's going to take a while. I mean, it's looking like it's not going to be an immediate impact by the looks of it. It's going to be a slow progression. Although America wants to big it up, they're actually going to have an open training session on Friday, which is kind of similar to what Tigres did over there during the final. So those are the developments. But overall, I think it was a 0-0. That one, the Clásico Capitalino, maybe the time frame doesn't work as well. I think that's something that Tom pointed out because yesterday. So I think that could also be a cause for the 0-0. Maybe there could have been a better spectacle. The game had been in the evening, for example. But that's TV network decisions. You know how it works here in Mexico, and it has to be at 12. But at the other games, it's just an equilibrium, of things. At the start of the season, Xolos, is the only team that they haven't conceded a goal yet. So I think that speaks volumes of the move that they brought in Pablo Aguilar. I mean, I think he's been impeccable, and 16 clearances against Rayados. I mean, that's like that tells you how big Pablo Aguilar is for Xolos.
Yeah, Jason, your thoughts on the Clásico? Your thoughts? I mean, I actually just want to go to you for you to talk about the Cruz Azul León match. Your thoughts on that one? It just seemed like for that one, it was, I don't know, a little dull, but at least Cruz Azul looked pretty good defensively, right?
I mean, I think they were pretty fortunate to come out of that with a draw. I think León had the better match. Certainly the first half, León were pretty well dominant. And Cruz Azul kind of scared me a bit. I think the defense does look good for Cruz Azul, with certainly pretty secure. But, I mean, León were a little unlucky to not get the goals in this one, I feel like. And, Cruz Azul not really clicking right now offensively. There's just not something quite right there. The attacking midfield position that's been lacking in the past, still kind of lacking. And Montoya is just a few matches into his spell here with Cruz Azul, so we'll see how well he can fit. So far, it's early, but it hasn't looked great.
Yeah, I've been a little disappointed by him, but I wonder if I should be more disappointed if I should just give him time to assimilate, because I think that I
think when Montoya is tricky, because over there in Sevilla he just didn't play. I mean, it was straightforward, like there was no playing time whatsoever. So coming here to Cruz Azul is kind of it's a renaissance for him. It's trying to bring back his career to how he was playing in Argentina, and of course, it's a different league, kind of the Mexican one. So, I think that's where it's another kind of being patient with the player, but the results have to be right away. There's not enough time,
I mean, it took Honda a little bit of time to get his rhythm, and look how he's been doing the past few weeks. So maybe he needs a little bit of time.
I think with Cruz Azul, watching that game, there was two things. One, I thought watching Luis Montes, Chapito Montes, on the ball, moving into that space between the midfield and the defense, and the way he kind of ran the game in a way, especially in the first half. That's the player Cruz Azul need. I don't think they've got that player, but who they do have is Gullit Peña. And I think when Peña time when he's starting games, honestly, it's going to depend a lot on how Carlos Peña adapts and Carlos Peña's form, and it's a big risk because this is a player who is so up and down. You know, he went to Scotland, couldn't do it. At Chivas, he didn't really do it. And now he's at another big club in Cruz Azul. But if you look at that midfield, you know, you had Rafael Baca basically playing off Mora, or playing in a kind of more attacking midfield role behind the striker in front of Silva and Salas. I don't think that, you know, Caixinha is going to continue to play that way. I think one of those three is going to miss out, and Carlos Peña is going to be, you know, put up there near Mora. And I think that, you know, I mean, Cruz Azul do need that type of player, but it's a big ask at this stage now for Peña, considering his recent history. That for me, that he's the key guy in this team.
Yeah, agreed. And actually, really quick, let's talk about Leon. I know it's not here on the schedule, but I think it's interesting to know. I mean, Tommy just mentioned, you know, I think Montes has had a great start to the season. I think he's done very well as let's say they're the number 10 for Leon, and that should be the position where Landon Donovan should be. I'm not gonna say he's gonna be a starter, but if Landon's gonna be getting minutes, if he's gonna get at least some minutes in the second half, he's gonna have to be fighting to somehow push Montes out of that starting 11 or some. I don't know. I guess it's what I'm saying here is that it's not promising for Landon to make as big of a splash as he wants on the field if Montes is doing just as well as he has been during the past few weeks. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
I think Donovan, especially this first season, isn't going to be a starter. You know, I don't see him becoming a starter. Obviously, if there's an injury and there's a spot that opens up, then yeah, quite possibly. But let's not forget, you know, Montes can play on the wing as well if required. And you know, there's obviously the option of changing the system at the minute. They've got Ivan Rodriguez, who started really well, a young Mexican midfielder, and Mejia, a very good Colombian central midfielder. So, you know, they've got two kind of, you know, contenciones, and in theory, Gustavo Diaz could play with one, and then drop Montes a little bit and open a space for Donovan. I mean, there are options for him, but I don't see it. I think in terms of fitness as well. I mean, you know, these teams are. I think one of the reasons for the 0-0s this weekend, by the way, was that this is the start of the season. You can see, you know, America Pumas. I thought both sets of players kind of ran out of steam at the end, and I think that happened in other games as well. But I think Donovan's going to take a good few weeks to get even where he's at the point of being able to start a game. So yeah, I see him more of an impact substitute. And I thought this was actually the type of game where if you had like a fully fit Donovan, he would have been really good off the bench, because I thought really good in the first half. It was a really top performance, just missed the goal. But then in the second half, it was almost like they just ran out of steam, ran out of ideas. And I think that's the context where Donovan comes in. And, you know, he's so good working in space. You know, he's so good at using space and using his, you know, his game intelligence. And I think that's where he can make an impact for me.
Yeah. I think really quickly before we start talking about the other 0-0 Querétaro Tigres, quick shout out to Ives Hurtado, who I guess he's struggling with those penalties, isn't he? He just Lahoud using some mind games for Scholz's goalkeeper, and Ives missing a second consecutive penalty, and it's a little unfair for I don't know if you guys saw, but the Rayados fans who were starting to boo him after he missed that penalty, just realizing that any other team in the league would love to have a player like Aviles, even if he missed 3 penalties in a row. But it was interesting.
You might just want to get somebody else on those penalties at this point, though. Yeah,
yeah that's true, though. That is true.
I think they got Panchito.
Yeah.
Panchito Gonzalez is now the penalty taker, apparently.
There you go.
All right, let's quickly chat about the fourth 0-0 draw. Querétaro, actually, I guess it was technically the second match of the week, or the second 0-0 of the weekend. I'm just confusing myself here, guys. All right, so let's talk about the 0-0 draw to Querétaro and Tigres. Jason, you know, I think it's worth noting, I mean, Querétaro, they've got that win over Lobos BUAP, then they got this draw with Tigres. You know, what's been the turnaround here? What's the reason why, you know, after struggling last season defensively, why they've been able to be a little bit better?
Well, I think there's probably something to be said for some of the additions that they made. Ramier coming in there, Samudio coming in there, and just a new regime, right? You have Tena coming in. It looks promising. 1 goal in 3 matches. It's pretty different from what they saw last season, where they were the second most goals allowed in the league last season. So it's definitely a big defensive turnaround. It's early. I mean, it's only 3 matches, but I mean, they they're playing against some pretty tough opposition and some tough attacks with America and Tigres already. So keeping those teams at scoreless is pretty impressive. So it's looking good. I mean, it looks like a stronger team, not one of the best teams, but a team that's going to be giving the top teams a tough play every week. So it looks like a team that's, I know, like even last season, beginning of the season, it looked like it was going to be Querétaro was coming on, and it looks like maybe they finally are.
Yeah.
I think Novaretti as well. I'm surprised Leon got rid of him, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good Liga MX centre back. I think you put him in front of Volpe, and that's a pretty good spine. Guerra's in front of them, and I think you've got a solid kind of centre spine of the team.
No, I agree. And I think that I think Mier has been decent for them. I think Novaretti has done quite well, and I think that just in that last match against just looking at the stats alone, you could see so much how that match went. It looked like Querétaro had like a back line of 5. It looked like Querétaro was just sitting back, and they just did a good job of absorbing pressure. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll continue to work with something that looks like a back line of 5 for that team.
And Tigres as well, it's almost like they can lose 2 games and no one cares, because you kind of just know that they're going to make the playoffs. Yeah. Because in theory, Tigres have got to win that game. They're a much better team than Querétaro, but nobody cares. It's fine. Tigres are down in 13th.
Yeah, the thing, I think, Tom, the thing with Novaretti there with Leon, I think it was the suspension problem. There was a period, where he got like 7-game suspension or something for spitting at someone, I think. Yeah. And I think that kind of broke the relation. So if he starts doing that with Querétaro, it's not going to look good for Querétaro.
All right, guys, let's talk about Pumas at the very, very top. Believe it or not, that they're in first place right now. I know they're tied for first, but still, if we're talking about turnarounds here, that is a very, very surprising turnaround for the team. Naive, why are they here? What has been the reason for their turnaround? If we're talking about like the more impressive reasons why they're up there.
With Pumas, Cesar.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, it's because it was cutting a little bit here. The signal in Mexico City.
It might be over here in San Diego too.
It might be here in Mexico City, I think. The signal hasn't been working that well for me in the last days. With Pumas, I think here is just having a solid identity now, with a good style of play. I think Marcelo Diaz, like we were talking about Honda a while back, I think Marcelo Diaz is already getting, fit and well adapted to the league. And I think that's big time, because he's a good midfielder that understands the positional game and, giving the pass to the open man right away. And someone like Gallardo that has sort of felt well at that position there as a left winger. I think you see how important he is for the offense. And, in general, it's a solid team. Even in the back, it's looking somewhat solid right now. There's Van Rankin has been shaky for many, many seasons. But right now, at least you're seeing some good performances from Van Rankin. It's not totally awful, as it was last season, for example. So, and I think that the fact that they brought in Luis Fuentes, it gives more freedom to Gallardo, because Fuentes just sits back in defense and as a left back, allowing Gallardo to flow a little bit forward. Alustiza, good reinforcement. We've been always saying here he's like a Liga MX guy type of fellow. He's gonna give you some goals, but I don't know if he's gonna give you that difference maker in the big games. But when you have also like a player like Nicolas Castillo, that also kind of alleviates a lot of things, because he's not a forward that is really common in this league. He's a bulldozer. You see him coming, you move out the way because he's going to run you over. So I think having that also gives Pumas this great start. If you take Castillo out of the picture, it looks awful. It wouldn't be the same. Yeah. It wouldn't be the same Pumas that we're talking about now.
Tom, your thoughts on Pumas or just Castillo and just his significance to his team? I know he did get a goal over the weekend, but clearly just any team that guy is on, he just has such an instant impact. It wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about players who can go to Europe, that someone like Castillo could go over. I believe he has been there. I can't believe I forgot this, but he was in Europe two years ago, I think. But
yeah,
anyway,
he was.
Yeah, but Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not fully convinced by Pumas. I know they've been getting a lot of praise recently, and obviously they've had a really good start of the season. But I'm not going to lie. I don't think they've got one of the best goalkeepers in the league. I think Arribas has started well at centre back. I'm not convinced about Quintana next to him. I think the midfield's looking better. Obviously, I completely agree with Naive about yes, he's a top player, potentially one of the best in the league. But yeah, you look at Fuentes, you look at Van Rankin, and that defense it's not convincing me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think over the whole season that it's going to hold up, to be honest. And obviously, I thought America ran out of steam basically. But on another day, I think America would have won that game. I think America looked over the 90 minutes the better team, the team with more quality. Obviously, Castillo, he's brilliant. He's a top player, and he just got quality written all over him. I'm not sure why he didn't work out in Europe. He bounced around a few teams. I think he was in the Belgium league.
That's right.
I think he was for a little bit, but it's not worked out for him. But yeah, he's a player who, European scouts are going to be all over him right now. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I think Pumas can make some good money on him. But if Pumas are selling someone like him, then what's the ambition of the club? So I think it's almost like a barometer this with Nico Castillo. I actually heard that Tigres were interested last summer. I'm not sure why they're.
Why would they be? Why would they need it? Sorry, that almost bothers me. That almost bothers me that they would want to bring in Nico Castillo.
I think it was before they signed Enner Valencia. Okay. Well,
you don't say like they're also interested in Oribe and they're also interested in like Gustavo Bo.
No, but that's a good point that Tom just made, because it's returning to the Ismael Sosa story. Because look at Ismael Sosa right now. He was the star of Pumas. I think when they played in the Libertadores, I think the last time, there was Libertadores going on with Liga MX teams, Sosa scored like 6 goals or something. He was spectacular. He was the best Pumas player on the pitch. Yeah. If Sosa would have remained in Pumas right now, imagine Sosa with Castillo. Heck, that'd be one of the best offenses in the league right now. Yeah. It already is interesting, but imagine those two. And Sosa doesn't even start in Tigres often. He started last week, no?
Yeah, it's a question of ambition. I think we're going to see with Nico Castillo what Pumas' ambition is. How much money they've got. Are they going to be able to resist bids? Because for me, the way things are in Europe these days, especially in somewhere like the Premier League that have just got so much money. I mean, we've seen this Alexis Sanchez transfer today. If you pay 15, 20 million, it's actually not much at all these days. And I look at someone like Nico Castillo, and he looked hungry. He looks like maybe he went to Europe a bit. He was young last time, and maybe this time he'll go back there and it'll click. But I mean, he's a player that I'd risk. So if I was a European club, I'd risk paying a decent transfer fee for. But exactly, now that's a great point with Sosa. I mean, for me, that shows Pumas lack ambition. Even the choice of manager. I'm not saying anything against David Patiño. We'll see how he goes, this season. He's definitely organized the team much better. And I think, he's obviously done some really good work on the training ground. I'm not completely slamming what Pumas have done this season. But I still don't see this Pumas team as one of the best in the league. And if something happens to Nico Castillo like last season, then I don't see the result of this season being too much different, to be honest.
No, that's a good point.
And real quick about, the other counterpoint that Pumas followers would say is, we needed the money so we can get players like Castillo. That's why we sold Sosa in the first place. But yeah, but that's another thing about having how the team is run, no? Because, for example, Tigres is a university, but there's a private company that puts the money, and that's why we see Gignac arrive to the Autónoma de Nuevo León club Tigres. I think Pumas needs something like that to compete against those big clubs now, like Tigres and Monterrey. And another point that Tom made about the Premier League. I mean, this weekend we saw Locadia from PSV move to Brighton. And Brighton, where's Brighton is not, your Arsenal, your Manchester United, but they put out the cash and they got Locadia out of PSV.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. That's something to keep in mind. I do like the fact that you brought up Sosa, just because it is interesting to think about like what Pumas would look like if they had a Sosa and he had Castillo working together. Jason, any other final thoughts on Pumas before we start talking about the relegation race?
No, I just really agree with what Naib said about Gallardo and his freedom moving forward. I think that's made a big difference. And as he said, I mean, Castillo just without him there, I think it looks a lot different. Alcides is a nice addition and complement to him, another goal scorer up there. But subtract Castillo, and it's not going to be pretty. But yeah, good so far. Long season ahead. But no matter what happens from here on out with Pumas, a lot better than what I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, that's entirely true. All right, guys, let's talk about the relegation race because, as Jason has noted here on the show guideline, it is looking like a two-team race between Lobos BUAP and Veracruz. It is worth noting that Atlas and Querétaro are also in the middle of this race, but because of the lack of amount of games that Lobos BUAP have, obviously, if they lose a couple, then those two losses will completely weigh against them significantly, as opposed to a couple losses for Atlas and Querétaro. So quick rundown of what it's looking like right now. So if Lobos get 7 more points, Veracruz would need 2 more points. If Lobos get 10 more points, Veracruz would need 11 more points. If Lobos get 14 more points, Veracruz would need 22 more points. So, I mean, I think when you look at this, the big talking point is just how poor Lobos have been to the start of the season. And Tom, what's wrong with? I mean, if we're looking at the last season, just the brilliant start that they had, and just how disappointing they've been this season, what's happened? Well, why didn't they have as brilliant of a start that they had last season, Tom?
Team a little bit more, and I think that as much as you praise the attacking intent, I think it's quite obvious that through the squad there isn't that much quality. It's a squad that they work together as a team, but when it comes down to it, there are there's a deficiency in quality between say them and Pachuca. And I think the Querétaro game the week before, I mean, I think they had 70% possession and they lost 2-0, and they kind of deserved to lose, and because Querétaro was sitting back waiting for him quite easily there. So yeah, I think it's a bit worrying now for him, I'd say, because they've lost the bottom of the league. I think there's a bit of pressure on. I think the directors of Lobos BUAP have backed Rafa Puente today, but whenever a manager gets kind of given the backing of the board, they're kind of starting to get in trouble. So yeah, and I think they're relying on Quiñones, who's a for me one of the best young players in the league, but he's still 20 years old, and I think that the attack's so reliant on him firing, and they're struggling a little bit for goals. I
don't know how you guys feel, but I kind of feel bad for Lobos BUAP because obviously they're taking Rafa Puente is taking a risk with the style of play he has. He's not going to sit back. He's not going to allow the other team to have more possession. He's attack by it, and it's very, very cool to see. And I appreciate that, seeing that from a promoted side. But then I don't know. But then you kind of feel bad. Do they have to be like a Necaxa when they first showed up? Do they have to sit back? Do they have to foul a lot? Do they have? It's not pretty soccer, but that's the reason why Necaxa ended up staying after they're promoted. And I do feel bad for Lobos BUAP just because it was such an exciting story last season, but at the end of the day, the style of play that they're utilizing is a little bit more of a risk, especially with some of the talking points that you just brought up, Tom, about the lack of talent they have in the team when you compare it to others.
And I think that's also the movements, in the 11 when you see the team is basically the three up top, which was in this case Cortés, the Ecuadorian that has a crazy hairdo, Quiñones, and I think Escoto. Those were the 3 attackers that Puente started against Pachuca. They literally don't defend. They just stay up forward, so the other defenders of Pachuca can stay, or the whatever team is against them, and the rest defend. I think because they're in the relegation, I think those 3 players have to defend. At least 2 of them, and one of them can stay up top, maybe Quiñones because of his speed. But there was a lot of miscommunication in the 3 forwards. I think Cortés, the number 10 Ecuadorian, came from Independiente del Valle. He's supposed to get the ball from the midfielders and take it to the forwards and give a good through pass. And he never did that. It was really bad game for Cortés against Pachuca. He never had a good pass to Quiñones, and Quiñones went up to Cortés and told him, "You're playing really bad." Well, not like that, but straight on his face, and told him, "You're not doing what you're supposed to do." But he's a new player. And one of the things that also struck me is the back line of three. It's basically a 3-4-3. And you have someone like Massa leave the center position and go to the right as a right back. And that's what he's going to get killed on the speed when you do that because he's not fast. And that exposes a lot of the defensive issue with Lobos because Advíncula, who's supposed to right wing back, doesn't move back and defend. He usually stays up to keep attacking, and that's wrong as well. I think the positioning also is something that Puente has to work with his coaching staff because teams already know that. I mean, they saw that last season, and it's repeating again this season. Is if we sit back and we find those spaces against Massa Rodriguez on the right side of the defense, we're gonna have a good shot to put a goal, you know. And I think that is something that Puente has to fix. And we'll see exactly how it evolves. But Veracruz is playing awful though. Veracruz is playing awful, so I think that saves Lobos from all this mess.
but that's why it feels so bad because if Lobos end up being relegated and Veracruz end up being just as bad as they have been, and somehow Lobos BOP get, and we all know about the relegation system and why Lobos BOP would get relegated, but it is very possible. So Chase, of course, the big question here is whether Lobos BOP are going to get enough points to fight off Veracruz. Is it going to happen?
So I mean, I kind of see it as they need to get up to around like 12 more points this season. They get up to that point. Veracruz needs 17 more. That's just not going to happen. So 12 points, you know, whether it comes from some draws, whether they get a few wins, I think they will just about be able to pull it off. I mean, Veracruz will not be getting a ton of points this season. It's going to be pretty low between both of them. I think Lobos, I mean, if they kind of clean up some of the errors, they clean up some of the mistakes, I think they're certainly not a good team. But I think they could continue to play this open style and this open system. I don't think they need to kind of pack it in and regress because maybe they're just not well suited to it with this roster either. I think they need to keep doing what they're doing. And 12 points is possible. They've had a rough stretch of games here. I think they could get there. It could get tight though. It could get really interesting. And I think it is going to come down to those two teams. Because we mentioned there's a couple other clubs with Atlas being down there and Querétaro, but there's still so many points above Veracruz that Veracruz is not going to be able to get that many points above them. Lobos, it's just going to come down if they're going to have to pull out a few wins here.
And if they could get also with Lobos, I think it's going to be important what someone like Negrito Medina and someone like Carlos Adrián Morales offered to the team. No, when I kind of what I witnessed on Saturday night in Pachuca, I saw, you know, Negrito was let down. He was feeling awful because of the defeat. It was a nasty. It could have been more than 3-1. It could have been 6-1, I think, because Pachuca missed a lot of opportunities. But Carlos Adrián Morales looked like he was disinterested. You know, he just left, and because he's not playing, he's not a starter. But I think those type of instances are going to be important because with more losses that Lobos gets, you know, if they keep accumulating the losses in this streak, it's going to put the confidence way down and the leaders have to step up.
Yeah, I agree. I most definitely agree.
I mean, Veracruz aren't picking up points. I mean, you go to Puebla and you think that's a game you win. You know, you're in the relegation battle and they've not. I mean, they didn't deserve anything. I think that usually what we've seen from a team that go into the season like this Clausura. So Veracruz obviously favorite to go down, but with a good season, you pretty much stay up. You know, if you're nearing the playoff places, I think they would have had a very good chance of staying up. But they've not invested, and you look at this team right now, and it's like, you know, it's basically.
You mean Carlos Esquivel isn't an investment, Tom? I just mess with you.
You know, basically, you know, Paganoni. I mean, he's been around. He's never really, you know, been amazing. Viniegra, obviously, just so many years on the Tigres bench. You know, Rivas as well. Mardes. I mean, these players that are kind of been discarded from other clubs, and you think, how are you going to beat those other clubs if you're picking up players that have been discarded by him? So, you know, I think Veracruz are almost, you know, Memo Vasquez on the bench as well. I think they've almost kind of given up. You know, I think from the directors down, I think, you know, I'm not saying the players, but I think, or the manager, but I think the directors kind of, if they really, really wanted to stay in this league, I think they had to do more in this transfer window. They had to go out and spend big money. But they do the same thing where they've got so many foreigners and there's so many of these, there's just weird deals where they bring, kind of just the randomest players, and throw them all in there and just hope it works, and Pueblo have been accused of doing that before, but Pueblo this time they've gone out and got some players with experience in the league. I think they've been a bit clever about it, and obviously with Meza, they've got somebody who knows the league inside out. Well, I just see Veracruz as not very good. I think they're a team that is going to be near the bottom of the league, and at this point they need to be mid-table up if they've got any chance of staying up, and you just can't see it.
Yeah, no, I
100% the truth of the matter is if Lobos don't get like 8, 9, 10 points the rest of the way, Veracruz were going to need very few points to stay up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could get like 2 more points the rest of the way and be safe if Lobos don't start picking up some wins. So I mean, it's gonna get real interesting toward the end of the season.
I think Lobos next up is
Pumas. No, I think it's Pumas.
Pumas and then America.
And I think during week 5 they take on Querétaro, which will be a must-watch game.
Yeah, they've got Lobos WAP coming up. They've got Pumas, and then they've got America away. And so you don't expect Lobos WAP. Sorry, I just changed the Lobos WAP for no reason, but that's the next 2 games. So you think I don't think they're going to pick up anything up out of those games. So then you look, what can Veracruz do? And I think that's going to be there's going to be Veracruz somehow. I mean, Veracruz, if they're ever going to kind of start doing something, they must be looking at Lobos WAP and thinking, whoa, like maybe we didn't think we had a chance of survival this season.
Yeah.
But those guys aren't picking up anything. They're doing absolutely nothing. So I think the next two weeks are absolutely vital for the relegation race.
Yeah, all I'm gonna say just to wrap up the relegation talk is that if Lobos WAP get demoted and Veracruz stay, that would just disappoint me so much, guys. Just disappoint me so much.
Lobos WAPs used 20 beat Pachucas this weekend. So it tells you a little bit, even that they actually got something going on over there with the youth system.
Yeah, let's just hope they stay up. Guys, let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about. I gotta go to Naive on this. Just recently, Osorio was on Football Picante. He had some interesting things to say. I mean, let's say some of the stuff he talked about. He talked about not enough players competing at the highest level for 3. He wanted to train more with specific players, but clubs didn't allow it. But Naive, what stood out to you from that long conversation? Actually, I believe it was about an hour that Osorio had on Football Picante.
No, I think it was an interesting one because it had basically 2 of the highest critics of his game or of his tenure with El Tri, Hugo Sanchez and Gomez Junco are 2 of the main critics in ESPN about the style and how he puts up the lineups and everything. There were interesting details. He Osorio admitted to the question that Faitelson asked him about if business is more important than the sport in Mexico, and he said, yeah, business is more important. I'm pretty sure when he thought about that answer, it's right away. Look at March. I mean, there's gonna be games here that could potentially been in Europe, but there's a contract there that stipulates that Mexico has to play in the U.S. in March. That's where it comes into play. Another thing that also intrigued me was the fact that he's not getting support from certain clubs, about having these mini camps. I know it's kind of impossible to do it nowadays, but I think if there was some way or another to move around the chips, I think it could be possible. Not every single week, but at least for example, now that the World Cup is around the corner, maybe one in February, maybe one in March, maybe one in April with the Liga MX based players. I'm not talking about a whole week of training together, maybe 3 days or something. I mean, meet Sunday night, finish Wednesday morning or something like that. But I think the fact that he's not receiving or there's not a total support from the Mexican clubs to that idea, especially now that, as we have said, I think last Patreon episode, we talked about it. I mean, there's a lot of Mexican players in Europe that are not playing. So that leaves you a little bit with that doubt of how they're going to arrive to the World Cup. And so that might make you depend a lot on the locals, on the ones that are in Liga MX because they play every week. So I think those were the things that stood out the most, and of course, how the 1974 Netherlands, 1978 Netherlands influenced the way that he approaches the game. I think it was also interesting to note that, how Cruyff was important in his teaching and what he thinks about the game. So I think those were kind of the bits that really stood out with me.
Yeah, Tom, your thoughts on anything regarding any of the quotes or anything that Osorio said on that Fútbol Picante conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he should have really been saying a couple of things, about the Mexican football being overvalued, and obviously he does think that, but I just don't know what's the point in it at this stage. You know what I mean? And I think the criticism of the Europe-based players, although in my mind it's completely valid, I'm not sure if it was the brightest thing to do. Again at this point. I mean, those players in Europe who aren't getting minutes, they're not happy. They're not like kind of like, oh, we're having a rest. I mean, they want to play. They know there's a World Cup, and I just didn't really see the point of Osorio really, criticizing him quite strongly for not playing and what Osorio thinks. We know that he wants more players in Europe. That when Mexico get a deeper pool of players playing regularly in Europe, then then when he thinks that Mexico advances a power in the World Cup, problem, and he's saying that again, just they have to be competing at this high level competition, and unless we have 5 or 10 competing each weekend against the best and training in the week with the best, we won't have a better national team. Now, okay, 100%. Everybody understands it. I mean, it makes sense. You know what I mean? But what's the point in saying that now before a World Cup? Why not say, I'm really happy with my players. Obviously, I'd really, really like it if they were playing more. I've got my fingers crossed that they're going to play more. But I'm confident with this group. We've got a really, really good group, and we're going to give this World Cup absolutely everything. I just think it wasn't the best message to send to the players more than anybody. At this point ahead of the World Cup.
No, I agree 100%. Where you think that, speaking as a fan of the Mexican national team, that's just the last thing you want to hear from the manager. If he believes that, that's okay. But when his players hear that, when his players in Europe are going to potentially be hearing these quotes, that's the last thing they need for confidence when they're already not getting those minutes abroad. So that did work, especially when you hear, I don't know, when you heard some like, was it Guardado who recently said, they're just like, oh, like, of course we can, like, we're going to go fight to win the World Cup. You're like, yeah, there we go. Guardado believes it. Guardado believes that Mexico can do that. Whether it's going to happen or not, obviously Mexico has like a 1% chance of actually winning the World Cup. I'm not going to say that Mexico is going to win the World Cup, but it does. I don't know. It just there was no confidence from.
Yeah, I mean, he's been offered a new contract as well. He admitted it.
Yeah,
he admitted he's been offered a new contract which is a massive story. I mean, because before they were messing around the issue. I'd heard also that he'd been offered one, but then if he's not signing one, is he ever going to sign one? Yeah. Like, if you're not going to sign a contract now, because at the end of the day, that is a bold statement from the Mexican Federation to say 6 months before a World Cup, you're already offering this manager, and he was offered it last year. You're offering this manager, a new contract based on what he's done in qualifying, not based on what's going to happen at the World Cup. It shows they've got real faith in him. But also for me, if he's not signed it, then what does that say about his future? It says to me that he's not really interested in renewing it, because if you're not going to renew it now, then why would you renew it at any point in the future, if you know what I mean?
It says he's considering his options. that's what it says.
I mean, it's been kind of a turbulent tenure, no? Even though I don't know if the word is turbulent, but because they qualified easily to the World Cup.
Off the field, maybe you could say.
But the result, the 7-0, the 4-1 against Germany, and all this, and now the statements weren't like appropriately said at the right time, like Tom says. I mean, it's a tricky situation. I don't think in 2017, in the summer of 2017, many of the Mexico players in Europe thought that their season was going to turn out the way it has. Especially, for example, someone like Héctor Moreno. I think the guy is gutted, crushed at the moment. He just doesn't know when he's going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, Héctor Moreno. And he is one of the leaders. He is the guy that specifically said that he moved to a better club, but he's not playing at the better club, at the better league, one of the top 5 leagues in the world. which is something right now that Mexico really doesn't have. Because when we see at the reality of the Mexican footballer in Europe, all of them are in Portugal, Belgium, Netherlands. Those are not the top 5 leagues in Europe right now. So it's a sad reality. It's someone that you have to buckle up and play with and see if some magic happens. Then you have 3 potential quote unquote starters in MLS too. I mean, that's what Mexico has, is a reality. Make it work. Maybe it's gonna go nicely, maybe it's not. But that's gonna be with the communication between Osorio, the players. Even Dennis Teglos, Ibarrondo is also an important person right now because he's supposedly helping the mental aspect, because a lot of the players right now are really way down in the confidence,
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to dive into a lot more of this during this week's Countdown to Russia podcast. I know we only have a few minutes left here, so I really want to talk about some of the Mexicans abroad during the last few minutes. Were there any, Tom, anything that stood out to you from the weekend, especially maybe regarding Chicharito? I know we were talking a little bit before we started the show about Chicharito a little bit. So anything regarding that, or just the result against Bournemouth in the 1-1 draw for West Ham?
Yeah, I mean, he's got his first goal since October, so it's important. I think you could tell he was absolutely delighted with it. He looked really fired up for that game as soon as he came off the bench. More than recently. I mean, I saw him play in the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't really look up for it. And he played against Tottenham as well in the league, and I don't know, he didn't seem the usual Chicharito. But I think there's a real transfer saga building up now over the next couple of weeks, because we've had this situation where David Moyes has been consistently coming out and saying that he respects Chicharito, that he likes him as a player. And then after the game on Saturday, he said, they're not looking to sell at all. They want to expand the squad. They're short on players, but he wouldn't rule it out. He was specifically asked, "Is Chicharito definitely staying?" And he said, "Well, I don't think. I'm pretty sure he is, basically. But if somebody offered 500 million for Pogba, then he'd leave United, and money dictates." And it's like, okay, so you're saying he's staying, but you're also saying, if an offer comes in that's good enough, then you wouldn't, you'd have to accept it. But it's a difficult one, because Chicharito's agent Eduardo Hernandez was on Fox today, and he was extremely, he came out and he said exactly what's going on, and what's going on is Chicharito has asked him to find another club. Chicharito's not happy. He wants to play before the World Cup. He doesn't think that under Moyes is going to be, getting the minutes under the system that Moyes plays, and that Chicharito's absolutely desperate to play. Now that's a big statement. That's coming from his agent, who he's been with all his career. So it's true. It's not like this is coming from a rumor mill. This is Chicharito's proper agent. He said he's going to meet on Thursday in London with West Ham, and they're going to talk about it. They're saying the most likely thing that's going to happen is a loan deal, but obviously it depends on West Ham. And Andy Carroll's reportedly out for 3 months.
Yep. Manuel
Lanzini is going to be out for a month as well. So yeah, I just can't. I don't know. I mean, I think this is going to go right down to the wire in January, and I think West Ham are going to put the foot down unless a club comes in and pays basically all of Chicharito's really, really high wages and loans him for that 6 months. Then for me, it's difficult to see it happen. I mean, I'd say that this Besiktas link, it's been all over the press. 8.5 million. West Ham bought the player in the summer for like 17. Why would West Ham in 6 months later sell him for 8.5? So I think you can discount kind of that rumor. Eduardo Hernandez, the agent, did say that Besiktas have kind of inquired, but he's one of a number of clubs. So that's the situation. I think it's going to be. It wouldn't surprise at all if Chicharito actually for the first time club. But we'll see how it goes, because it seems like the club is saying one thing, Hernandez is thinking and wanting another thing, and it's like, is it going to come together? We'll see it. But for me, really key couple of weeks for Chicharito's career. I think Mexico really need him to be coming into that World Cup really on form, unlike 2014 where he was having that nightmare with David Moyes.
Also, quick shout because of those rumors. Quick shout out to all the Turkish fans who have now started to follow me on Twitter. You guys are constantly asking me about the Chicharito stuff. I don't know. Thank you. For all those follows on Twitter. I did not expect that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if West Ham buys a forward, no? Because I mean, with the money in the Premier League, you would think that West Ham might be able to buy, a forward from some league that interests Moyes, and I think that could permit Chicharito to move on. And look, in the price tag, Tom, 17 million, whatever. No, this is Vergara's moment. This is Chivas' moment. If they brought Pulido for a large sum of money, why not bring the prodigious son to the team back? I mean, just do it now. I think it's the appropriate time. I mean, I wish he could stay in Europe. Yeah. But look, just bring him back to Chivas. He's going to start every game. He's going to play, and Chivas is going to become a title contender with a striker of that sort in his team.
I just think with those injuries, it just seems so unlikely because I mean, January's not the time to buy forwards. I mean, it's hard finding goal scorers at this point, even with all the money in the Premier League and what West Ham could potentially spend. I mean, they have one, right? I mean, maybe he's not happy, but he's. I mean, not happy with the situation with the managers, surely, but primarily not happy with the lack of minutes. Well, he's going to be getting the minutes now. I mean, he's going to be playing with the injury. So, I mean, it's not ideal. It's probably not what he's looking for, but I just can't see him going anywhere at this point with those injuries.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. And the other thing is, if you're going to loan him out to another Premier League club, Newcastle really need a striker, for example. You're loaning him out to somebody who potentially is going to be you're fighting relegation against. And you just can't see, West Ham loaning him out to another Premier League team to boost them, at this point in the season. Yeah. But with the Chivas thing, I don't know. I think Chicharito's desperate to stay in Europe, and obviously Chivas at some point is going to be an option. But I think there's also political stuff with Chivas. I think the Hernandez Balcazar family, Higuera. It's weird at Chivas. It's really weird.
This is really interesting. When this political, I never expect that.
And I don't think Chicharito's the type of person now with the maturities that he's got to go there and take that kind of stuff, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I don't know. I just think it's I can't see it coming together. But never say never.
No, that's definitely an interesting note that you just brought up there. And really quickly on some of the other Mexicans abroad, Naib, your thoughts on any of the players or any performances stood out? Because I mean, when I was looking at some of the results, I mean, obviously the 5-0 loss to Barcelona for Guardado and Real Betis, and also I think a quick shout out to Carlos Salcedo, who's just quietly gaining more and more minutes with Eintracht Frankfurt.
No, I think that Salcedo is actually a really positive story. Coming from Europe, of all of the kind of not so positive stories that are coming from Europe, I think that's one. He's winning a role in Eintracht. We're still kind of on expectation of waiting Marco Fabian, who I think it's another kind of like what is his level? He's
training with the team. He's training with the team.
He's training. He still needs some playing time there, and when is the return gonna come about? February, March? Maybe February, I would say. And yeah, with Guardado, I mean, it wasn't a nice night, but then again,
it wasn't a nice second half.
It was not a nice second half. His kid had a fun night though. Maximo taking a picture with Messi. He got the photo. Got $100 million smile in that photo with Messi. But I just think that he's putting himself in that scenario. No, playing against Messi. He's probably gonna destroy you, but you try to stop him somewhere or another. And I think that level of competition raises your IQ of the game, because I'm pretty sure Guardado is going to watch that game over and over again and understand where he messed up and where he can improve. And he's doing that at 30 years old. I mean, I think that is why Guardado is the standout, because he continues to try to improve himself.
Yeah. Jason, your thoughts? Anything on the Mexicans abroad, Guardado? I don't know if you got a chance to watch that interesting second half there, the Messi show.
I didn't, but I mean, I just saw the score and I just checked, like hoping that he came out at halftime. And then it's like, no, full 90. Like, oh, okay. That's kind of a shame. I saw that Antuna got some minutes
nice.
In the Netherlands. So that's a positive story there. And I guess Gouveia is still playing pretty well too. So two positives there from some of the youngsters. at least coming up where some of these aren't quite as positive.
No, definitely. Obviously, we got to keep an eye on Tuna and Govea. Guys, let's do a quick little plug-in for our Patreon page. Once again, I mean, if you guys don't already know, we have a lot of extras that we like to do on the Patreon page. I mean, we have Jason's Bet of the Week. Jason, where are we at right now with the Bofo count?
Man, last week I was up 1,000 or so. I was up to like 3,000, up 2,000 from where I started. So I mean, it was just all kinds of.
I didn't know if you're just making that up now because I don't.
No, I'm keeping. I mean, I'm very strict about this. I'm not messing around, but I got cocky this week, and I got washed out pretty hard this week.
You picked Lobos over Pachuca, Jason.
I did.
I didn't watch the last one because I was sick. I was out for a week with the flu, and I was just like laying in bed. So
I really needed Tigres to get me the win. They didn't do it for me either. Morelia couldn't score. It wasn't a good one, but we'll bounce back this next week. It'll be fine.
Wait, you don't only get Jason's Bet of the Week. You also get the Countdown to Russia podcast, which is every week. It's usually me, Tom, and Naive, but just the past couple of weeks, Tom was on vacation. I was dying last week, so I wasn't on the show, but it's usually the three of us. We talk about just nothing but El Tri. We'll probably talk a lot about Osorio this week. We'll probably talk a lot about the Football Picante interview. It's just 1 hour usually about an hour, just dedicated to national team talk. And of course, it's all with a preview for the upcoming World Cup. Next, and now that the season's here, we have a few other extras. I mean, I put up a full interview that I had with one of Schultz's midfielders a couple weeks ago. We'll see what else I put up there too during this Liga MX season. But for those who are interested, and also, by the way, thanks again so much to everyone who's already donated. Thank you 1,000 times. But yeah, for those who are interested, it's patreon.com/The Mexican Soccer Show. So once again, patreon.com/The Mexican Soccer Show. Just give it a go. You don't actually have to donate. Maybe just click on the page. Maybe you're interested to see what some extras we can give you, but it's obviously worth checking out. And guys, I think that's about it. I just realized it's 8 minutes past the hour, so it's a little bit of a longer show.
Yo, Tom, you got Dunkin' Donuts in Guadalajara?
Yeah, I don't go though, me.
Well, that's where you can get the glazed donut, because that's where I usually go. I go get there, get some coffee. Yeah, that's what they sell. I never seen a Dunkin' Donuts in Guadalajara.
We're still on air.
The show's just come full circle. I mean, it's just completely
Tom, do you guys get Krispy Kreme out there?
No,
we do. I do have it in Mexico City. That one, yeah.
Oh yeah.
You guys get Krispy Kreme in Mexico City?
Dunkin' Donuts have seen around.
Crazy.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that question throughout the whole show. I gotta ask Tom if there's Dunkin' Donuts in Guadalajara.
Well, this has been the Donut Podcast. Stay sweet, guys. Okay. No. Let's have Naive wrap it up. Let's have Naive close out today's episode. Let's hope he doesn't say something about donuts. But if it's about donuts, I mean, it's up to him. So Naive, close us out.
No, well, I think it's an exciting week because we'll see the San Antonio roster. We'll finally know it. We already offered our options. It looks like the MLS Legion will be present, and I think that's going to be an important game for those three. And we'll see. Jonathan Gonzalez's story will prolong, I think, this week. Will Rodolfo Pizarro be in the call-up? I think that's going to be another question, because if he's not, that means that his options to the World Cup are basically not present at all. Nestor Araujo won't probably be on the list because he left the game against Morelia with a muscular injury. So I think that is an opportunity for someone else. But yeah, I mean, see a lot of talk about Henry Martin as well. Great start with America. Will he be in the call-up? So we'll see this week.
Yeah. All right. So thanks, everyone. Dunkin' Donuts, for listening. We're here for advertising opportunities. And I'll see you on the next edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. Thanks again, guys.